I don't really remember anything about the Beatle days. It seems like a sort of, previous incarnation.
George Harrison always looked calm in public, the quiet Beatle with the gentle smile and the thoughtful eyes. But behind the scenes, there was a war raging inside him for years, and it wasn't with the press, the fans, or even the chaos of fame. It was with the one person who made him feel small, ignored, and trapped in his own band. George was born on February 25, 1943, in a tiny Liverpool house during non-stop wartime bombing, raised in a family that had almost nothing but still gave him everything they could. His mother worked cleaning jobs, his father worked exhausting shifts, and George grew up sharing beds and stretching pennies just to survive. But when he heard Elvis Presley's Heartbreak Hotel drifting out of an open window, it hit him like lightning. He didn't just want music, he needed it. He begged for a guitar, practiced until his fingers bled, and became obsessed with proving he was more than the quiet kid in the corner. When he met Paul McCartney and later auditioned for John Lennon's group, his talent was undeniable, even though Lennon hesitated because George was so young. Still, George earned his place, and the world would soon know the Beatles as unstoppable. But inside the band, the truth was darker. Lennon and McCartney were treated like royalty, while George was treated like a backup player, a younger brother who should stay in his lane. Album after album, George was restricted to 1 or 2 songs, while John and Paul filled the rest like it was their personal empire. Even when George wrote masterpieces, they dismissed him, laughed off his ideas, and acted like his music wasn't worth their time. And when George turned toward Indian music and spirituality, searching for something deeper than fame, the mockery got worse. Paul rolled his eyes, cracked jokes, and treated George's beliefs like a weird hobby. John didn't help either. He often ignored George entirely, too consumed with his own world. The more George tried to grow, the more the band tightened the leash. His song Only a Northern Song, which quietly criticized the Beatles' unfair business structure, was rejected, and on Sgt. Pepper he was pushed so far aside that he recorded Within You without a single Beatle showing up. Imagine being in the most famous band on earth and realizing you're alone in the studio, creating something spiritual and powerful, while your so-called brothers can't even be bothered to listen. George wasn't just being sidelined musically, he was being erased emotionally. And by the time the Let It Be sessions began in 1969, the tension finally boiled over. Cameras captured Paul constantly correcting George's guitar playing, telling him what to do, how to do it, and when to do it, like George was some hired session musician instead of a Beatle. George's face said everything: tired, defeated, humiliated. Then came the moment that broke him. George calmly said the words that sounded polite but carried years of rage: "I'll play whatever you want me to play, or I won't play at all." And not long after, he walked out. Not for attention. Not for drama. He walked out because he couldn't take another second of being treated like he didn't matter. While Paul obsessed over perfection and control, George was suffocating. The Beatles weren't a brotherhood anymore. They were a prison. Even when George returned, nothing truly changed. Paul still pushed, still dominated, still made George feel like his contributions were unwanted unless they served Paul's vision. George carried that bitterness into his solo work, writing songs like Wah Wah and Run of the Mill, thinly veiled emotional explosions aimed at the man who crushed his confidence. Years later, George admitted something heartbreaking. Paul had ruined his belief in himself as a guitarist. That wasn't just conflict, that was psychological damage. And the betrayal went beyond music. George watched the Beatles fall into lawsuits and bitterness, watched Paul sue the band, watched friendships collapse into business warfare. Even as George achieved massive success with All Things Must Pass, proving he had been a genius all along, the wound never fully healed. The truth is, George didn't just feel ignored. He felt robbed. Robbed of respect, robbed of equal footing, robbed of the joy of creating in a band that was supposed to be family. And while George searched for peace through God, meditation, and spiritual truth, he was still haunted by the years of being treated like an outsider in his own legacy. By the time the Beatles were honored and celebrated later in life, They were legends to the world, but fractured men behind closed doors. George carried that pain quietly, the way he carried everything. He didn't scream about it. He didn't make headlines with it. He just held it inside, even as it ate away at him. And when George Harrison passed away on November 29, 2001, his final message to the world was about faith and the search for God. But the truth remains. Behind the calm voice and spiritual words was a man who never forgot the humiliation, the control, and the betrayal. And the Beatle George Harrison resented more than anyone wasn't a stranger, wasn't an enemy, but the bandmate who made him feel like he was never enough, Paul McCartney.